Russ. Good to see you, man. And let's cover the biggest story on the field from last night, and that was Alex Cobb, 1 out away from a damn no-no. You had the great plays. You had the hitter error early on. There were so many good storylines, and I picked up this game kind of halfway through. And lastly, the irony for me was you have Gabe Kapler allowing a pitcher to go 131 tosses in this game to finish out a one-hitter.
Yeah, no, it was a really cool moment for Alex Cobb, and he was shoving that entire game. And it's funny that you mentioned the thing about Gabe Kapler, who big analytics guy and likes to go off the numbers, and letting a veteran pitcher and Alex Cobb go out and do his thing. And I was on, X or Twitter, whatever they're calling it these days, and I was seeing things like, "Ooh, old school manager Gabe Kapler allowing his guy to go deep into this game." I'm like, that's actually not his brand at all. So that was interesting to see. But something while I was watching that game, knowing I was coming on with you guys, that I wanted to ask AJ and Kratzy is, when you're watching a guy throw a no-no, are you sitting there like calling pitches while you're watching, or are you far enough removed where you're like, I can just enjoy the performance?
I ain't calling nothing. I'm sitting there watching.
I watch.
Okay.
I've been there. Now my oldest son is, or my two sons are sitting there and they're talking like, "Oh, what would you throw this guy?"
Right.
Maybe we'd talk about it, but like for myself, I'm so good at removing myself from the game because it takes so much concentration. And for me to sit there and be like, "Patrick Bailey, you should have thrown this," but no chance. Like, he's seen what that splitter was doing the whole night, how he's bringing that two-seamer back, all that stuff. I don't even attempt to do that.
No. Okay, I was just curious, just seeing
Kratzy,
that. Like, all right,
Kratzy
maybe
nailed that, Russ. Kratzy nailed that one. Yeah, dude, trust me. Plus, you don't know what Alex Cobb has that day. I mean, I ain't watching every pitch. I'm flipping back and forth. I'm not watching every pitch, and I'm not locked into how he warmed up and what. Oh, I'm like, dude, like, enjoy it. I'm a fan now. I ain't a player anymore. I have my shot.
Only with your kid, maybe you'd be on a different level.
My kid, but dude, I'm in Florida. Dude,
I'm saying if you're watching your kid too, it's
watching
different.
My kid, well,
that's different.
Yeah, my kid don't pitch though.
Right, right, understandable. But do we have the Slater catch? Let's show that too while we're talking through it. And did you see the play early on from Schmidt at third base?
Watch it, dude. There was a hurricane coming.
Here it is to left center. That's a great catch to end the 8th inning. That's the signature moment.
That's when you think, all right, this is happening.
That's who was it, Dwayne Wise?
Yeah, Dwayne Wise.
Yeah. I mean, that's a ridiculous catch. And Todd Father, Cincinnati challenged it too, which, hey, that's their right. Like, you're trying to win a ball game. You're a wild card team. I just thought it was funny that you've got so much going on. And I think they were booing him a little bit. They're like, really? You're challenging that shit?
It could. I mean, listen, it was close. It was really, really close play. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to challenge it to win and everything else. Russ, my question for you, the Reds, they're kind of slugging off here a little bit. They're struggling. Do you see them picking anybody off waivers we just talked about?
Yeah, you guys brought up the Giolito. I think that does make the most sense because you look in most of the season, the starting pitching has been the area where they've kind of fallen short, right? They've been carried by these young guys, and that offense and that young enthusiasm can only take you so far, right? Before you need some guys who can give you some quality innings, because it can put so much pressure on your bullpen, especially at this point in the year when you're, I looked at the Reds for like 8 weeks. They were all gas, no breaks, right? And they were playing good baseball, and everybody loved them, and they were outscoring, really good teams. But after a while, you need to be able to win a 3-1 ball game, right? Win a 4-2 ball game. And so if you're able to get a Mike Clevenger, if you're able to get a Lucas Giolito or a guy like that, that helps you. There's only 5 weeks left in the season, and it is a full-on sprint to the finish line. And there's still a team that could be in this thing, right? Like, I wouldn't just say just because of how they've played, they're out of it, right? You get somebody in there. You guys have been there where you bring in a reinforcement, like, oh shoot, like we're in this thing again. And so I still think they're talented. They're a talented roster. And while I'm with Scott, like, I wanted to see them do more at the deadline because of where they were. If you're able to kind of make up for that and say, all right, we can pick up this guy and slide him right into the rotation, that could be the move for them.
They had this chance. We talked about it yesterday or the day before. I think it was when we were in Philly. Do you think the ownership or front office, whoever's making these decisions, looked at this roster and was like, there's going to be some regression. We don't think Ellie De La Cruz is going to hit for a cycle every week of his career. And now they're like, see, we're right. And so we're not going to go and get anybody? Or is it I really think the ownership or front office was like, it's a little too early. Whether or not they wanted to get rid of their prospects or not, or money or anything, I don't think they believed in it in the front office. I think the players believe in it because they're fun to watch.
I think a lot of these young rebuilding teams feel that way, where there's like, we're a year too early, right? Where I know that's how, the Orioles felt, last year, where it's like, oh man, we're a really good team, but we're probably a year early, right? And then they expected the year they're having this year. But obviously when you get there, you have a fan base that's looking at you like, all right, we're here now, like screw the process and all that other stuff. But you have, front offices that are like, hey, we put a plan in place to have sustained success, right? And you don't want to start moving prospects and moving these guys that while you were bad, you were able to stockpile your system and those players are going to help you get where you want to go. Do you then move some of those guys to acquire a short-term rental and hurt a long-term gain? There's tons of teams around the big leagues that feel that way. But then you have teams like the Chicago Cubs that probably felt that way this year. And you see where you are, and you see where you are in the division. And you see that the wild card's also open. You're like, screw it. We gotta go and do something to help this roster because they've played well enough. We have a guy in Cody Bellinger that we didn't know would play at MVP level who's doing that. Let's go get the best bat on the market in Jeimer Candelario and see where we are at the end of the season.
There's a lot of teams that could, make some moves here. One of the moves that I discussed yesterday on the show, and breaking news, was Chris Getz being named GM of the White Sox. Now,
big insider, AJ Brzezinski.
Yeah, exactly. Watch out.
It hasn't happened yet,
Watch
but
out.
It's more than likely going to happen, okay? And Hunter Renfroe just went deep as he's on waivers, by the way, so that just adds to his value against the Phillies.
That is true.
But is that going to happen, the Chris Getz thing? Because I was told by numerous people it is at the finish line, and they just haven't broken the tape yet. And also, after that, I'm watching Dylan Cease go out, and he's given up 3 in the first. Should the White Sox have traded Dylan Cease?
All right, to the Cease point first. Should they have traded him? Maybe, right? Like, if you didn't get exactly what you wanted with the club control that he has left, you're in no rush to do that, right? Like, if they wanted to come back in the offseason and say, all right, let's find a landing spot for Dylan Cease where he would still have 2 years left of club control. We can still get a hell of a haul for him and kick this rebuild off right. Sure, right? Like I wasn't all like, oh my gosh, it wasn't Shohei, right? Where you have a guy who's an impending free agent, you don't move him, and then you don't make the playoffs. So I look at those two things differently because of the contract and the club control. But I'm looking at the Getz thing. And if they're going to hire Chris Getz to be their new head of baseball operations, my question would be the process, right? Like to not go take a couple of weeks after the season's over, interview candidates. There are a lot of candidates around the big leagues that come from winning organizations, teams who have been, in the World Series and the playoffs consistently that you could talk to. And then at the end of that, if you say Chris Getz is our guy, then fine, but you went through the process to all of a sudden, a week after you make all these changes in Chicago, to then say, "No, we have our guy already. It's Getz." Do you have enough information to make that call right now? That's the thing that I've been thinking about, while thinking of who the possible candidates to lead that front office could be, because it's like sometimes you just need to go through the process, talk to people, see what you want. Like, do you know after a week what you want in a head of baseball operations? I don't know if they do.
I'll tell you what Jerry wants. He wants familiarity. He wants comfort. He knows Chris Getz. And listen, I'm not around there every day. You're around there more than I am. I come in every once in a while, but I guarantee you Getz sits up there with Jerry a lot in his suite. I've seen him, right? And I'm sure Jerry's talked to Getz, but I agree with you. This is a White Sox move. Stay in line. Don't get outside the lines. Because even in their hiring process for Tony, they didn't interviewed one person. It was Willie Harris on the phone for 5 minutes, right? They brought in Ozzie. They already knew Pedro Grifol, and there's conspiracy theories that Getz was behind the Pedro Grifol because they were buddies in Kansas City, right? But now this is a White Sox move because they don't go outside the box ever. It's always inside the box. It's always Jerry and Tony La Russa's friends that are brought in, and Chris Getz fits right in line with that, especially if it's Dayton Moore.
Yeah, and we had that conversation after they let go of Kenny and Rick, where it's like, well, if I don't know you, right, I really can't make this move. And I know a lot of people 2 cycles ago when they hired Tony La Russa, everybody thought that the next manager of Chicago White Sox was going to be AJ Hinch. And then I think you get to the finish line, it's like, nope, Tony La Russa is the new manager of the Chicago White Sox. And everybody in that org is like, oh man, I can't believe this is happening. Where you go back and watch that press conference where Rick is introducing Tony. It looks like a hostage video. Like nobody wanted to be there, and they knew that this wasn't the right decision. But that's kind of how they operate, and it's hard to be different. It's hard to be the organization that White Sox fans want them to be if you continue to go through or not go through the right process, the right channels to make sure you have the best candidate available. If you think Chris Getz is the best candidate, fine. But if you look back since he became player development director for the Chicago White Sox, who have they developed that says, you know what, this is the guy to lead us in the next 5 to 10 years of White Sox baseball?
It's a great call, and much better times right now in Chicago, both short-term and long-term. I know you touched on the Cubs a little bit. So we have Cubs-Brewers, good fire going on in this series. Great game yesterday, great call by AJ. And if you'll notice, AJ, at some point in the ticker, I put in a special for you. AJ, what did I say? AJ smashed the under or something like that. I mean,
dude, when the wind's
did you see?
Wrigley,
There were 3 baseballs. There were 3 baseballs that were scorched. And they had no fucking
chance. And the outfitters were like running in.
I think they were all by Brewers too. But thoughts on the race in this division? Yeah, to me right now, I think it's more Cubs and Brewers and the Reds in the 3 spot, but still a wild card contender. But also what we're seeing from Milwaukee. I know the win streak finally ended, but damn, if this team can hit, they might win a World Series.
Yeah, I think you're seeing the rotation that the Brewers thought that they would have when the year started, right? Obviously, not having Brandon Woodruff for an extended period, that hurt them a lot. Not having the version of Corbin Burns that they thought they would see, from the start of the season, obviously hurt. But those guys have figured it out. Freddie Peralta, friend of the show, Corbin Burns, and Brandon Woodruff have combined for an ERA around 2.80 in the second half. So you're getting the starting pitching that you wanted. And then now you're starting to see some of that offense. I don't think they're ever going to be an offense that goes out and blows people away, scoring 6-7 runs. But if they can get 4 or 5, knowing that you have Devin Williams in the back end of that bullpen, they're going to be able to win some ball games. And I think what's really fun to me at this point in the season is that you still have that head-to-head matchup, Cubs and Brewers up in Milwaukee, last 3 games of the season. It should be a lot of fun.
So I know the favorites are Dodgers and Braves in the National League. Is including those 2, is anybody in the National League raising their hand and saying, yeah, we'll take on the Phillies in the first round? Seems like a fair fight.
I don't think anybody wants that smokecracy. Like, I think you're looking at a team that always in the second half, they can just hit that switch. It's like, oh man, we are really good at baseball. And now you have Trey Turner, who you committed $300 million to, realizing that, oh, I'm still really good at baseball. That lineup doing what they did last night to the Angels, I don't think anybody looks at them, even the Braves and the Dodgers, saying, you know what, I want that in a 5-game series, a 7-game series. And for a team that knows what it takes to get to the World Series, who have gone through as much adversity as they have in the last 2 years, they're prepared for these moments. A lot of teams aren't.
Especially with Nola and Wheeler kind of learning what it takes to throw a little bit deeper into the season. Nola had like 4 or 5 straight years where September was a decline. And now last year, and he was increasing, he was improving as September went, and saw what he did in the playoffs. And now this year they went to like a little 6-man rotation. Stuff's falling in line for the Phillies right now here, and it is scary canary for the rest of the National League.
And the fact that they were able to get Bryce Harper back, he's looking like the Bryce Harper that we know. He's been able to play first base, and people haven't really even talked about it, and that's a great thing for the Phillies. Like, if we were talking about Bryce Harper playing first base, and it's like, oh man, Bryce made an error tonight, Bryce made a bad throw. Now you're like, all right, dude, they need to find some solution at first base, but They've been able to make that work. They've been able to, finally see a version of Nick Castellanos that they thought that they would see last year when they signed him. Yeah, I'm seeing a different version of Alec Bohm at the plate than what I've seen in years past. Like, this is a guy that is starting to find that power, and you look at that frame, and you always thought, okay, that's a guy that can hit for big-time power, and has really started to figure his stroke out. So, offensively, I think they have the potential to be one of the deepest lineups in all of baseball. They're showing that with what they did last night. And if that starting rotation continues to pitch like they know how to, right, with what they have in place there, they're going to be in a really, really good spot come into the season.
Yeah, and they've been here before. I mean, telling them they're a wild card team, cool. We did that last year.
And they ain't scared of the Dodgers, Braves. They ain't scared of
No way.
That's the thing.
They have star power. And not all those guys have even clicked yet, and they've done it.
That's the key. They beat the Braves last year, right? They went to the World Series.
They did.
They're like, we can do this.
And Bohm yesterday was cool. I mean, they intentionally walked Harper. He homered earlier in the game. We'll get to the Harper quote later, too, which is incredible. But then Bohm's like, fuck you, threw in homer. I like it. He's still young, too.
Words.
People forget. I mean, he probably did. I mean, he
tells
it like it is. Philly fans know, and they respect that. We know that from last year. Russ, great catching up as always, dude. We'll hit you next week, all right?
Guys, real quick before I go,
yes.
I know you guys having my guy Jose Trevino on. Tell my guy I said what's up.
Oh, shit, because you know him from growing up, right?
We went to Oral Roberts together, and he was the first athlete I ever interviewed.
Wow. Okay, so do you have anything good for us that we haven't talked to him about that we should know about, or like any embarrassing college story, both on the field or what he was like, or is he just like this model citizen like he is now?
Now, Hose has always been a great dude. Most people don't know that he was a shortstop, right, in college. And when I first met him, he was playing shortstop, he was playing third base, and he was catching. He wasn't catching full time at the time. And obviously, he came into college as a catcher as well. But he was a shortstop, and he was playing short and third base, and got drafted as a catcher and ended up winning the Platinum Glove. So it's really cool to kind of see that backstory. He was always a guy that had really good hands. And then to be able to translate that to the big leagues into a Platinum Glove is amazing.
I didn't know that. Todd Father, did you know he was a shortstop in college?
I don't know that either. No wonder why he's got really good hands. Yeah, you're right.
Wow.
Russ and Jose were in Lambda together at Oral Roberts.
That is not true. That is not true. But another really cool thing, closer on that team, when I was a freshman, Jose was a junior, Jordan Romano from the Toronto Blue Jays.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Those two were teammates?
Yes, they were.
Okay, that's good because the Blue Jays and Yankees don't love each other this year. So we'll get into that a little bit, too. And Blue Jays are in trouble. We'll get into that.
Hey, Scotty,
good intel. Yeah.
Scotty, what's the nickname of Oral Roberts?
The Flames, bro.
No.
I don't know.
Used to be what is it, Russ?
I don't watch much college stuff.
Aren't they the Owls?
The Golden Eagles. The Golden Eagles.
Wow. We are terrible.
Ty got the bird. We had the wrong bird.
Why do they have the flame then? They got the flame everywhere.
So if you go to Oral Roberts, they have the prayer tower in the middle, and it has like a flame on the top.
Ah, okay. Okay, because on their uniforms, they have a flame on their hat.
That is correct. That is correct.
Betsy, I was way off, bro.
Foul territory. Don't go to us for college nicknames.
Yeah, that was close, Todd.
That's right. Is it Rice the Owls?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Rice and Temple
and Florida Atlantic.
They're all Owls?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Come on. Wow. The old Scrooges back in the day all just copying each other. Owls. I love that.
I mean, you got all the Tigers. You got LSU. You got Clemson.
Yeah.
You got
college. So original.
Missouri.
Russ, thank you, dude. We'll see you soon.
See you guys.
Cheers. We'll come.